We look fantastic. All right, 1, 2, 3. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Chalkboard History. Today's topic, Francis Marion Cockrell. We're on a run of cool and sexy Confederate officers. So we talked about everybody's favorite rebel. Well, maybe not favorite rebel, but Patrick Cleburne's super popular. And then we talked about William Loring, who's not as popular, but I think he's really cool.
Super cool.
But then there's General Cockrell, who I think he's an interesting guy, but his unit, in my modest opinion, commanded the best Confederate brigade in the American Civil War, and maybe the best brigade of the entire war. These guys were everywhere, beginning to end. Tell us a little bit about Mr. Cockrell.
Well, he's born in the middle of nowhere in Missouri, in Warrensburg, something like that. And he studies to be an attorney. And when secession comes to Missouri, he's all about leaving. I mean, he's
hothead.
I know. But when they refuse to leave, he joins a unit of the Missouri Guard and fights at Wilson Creek, I think, with Sterling Price. Yeah. Gets his start there, and then they get rolled into the Confederate Army. And then, like you said, they're everywhere. I mean, they're at Pea Ridge and Iuka. And
Wilson's Creek is such a great battlefield. It and Pea Ridge were late additions. In fact, Ed Bars was instrumental in getting those added to the National Park System, like I think it probably started in the late 1950s, but I think they were added in the early 60s during the centennial. They're pristine. At that time, I mean, even when I first saw them, there wasn't, Springfield, Missouri wasn't all that big, and Pea Ridge is really out.
So they had never been built on.
There wasn't anything close to them, but Wilson's Creek is just an amazing battlefield. It's small, it's tight, hilly, wooded. It was fought on a blistering hot day in August. But yeah, Cockrell's guys are in all of that. And those battles, I mean, he really sees the war, he sees it before a lot of people do. I mean, it's so easy to forget. Like, you just hopscotch into all of a sudden, it's the middle of 1862, and Robert E. Lee suddenly is in command in Virginia. There'd been nasty fighting out in Missouri and Arkansas.
So where is the place where he gets blown up in the air? I mean, he's injured over and over and over again in the war.
That's Vicksburg. But before they get to Vicksburg, because they're part of Pemberton's army, you mentioned Corinth. Corinth is now part of the National Park System, but it's connected to Shiloh because after the Battle of Shiloh, everything pushes south to Corinth, and then Grant takes the city, which is important because it's such a rail junction, because the Memphis and Charleston, from Memphis, Tennessee to Charleston, South Carolina, was the only direct connection in the South from the Mississippi River to the Atlantic Ocean, which is just amazing. So anyways, the Confederates tried to take Corinth back, and guess who's in command of the army?
The U.S. Army.
The Confederate
Army. Bragg. No, it's not Bragg. Who is it?
Earl Van
Dorn. Oh, holy cow.
So Van Dorn's in command, and that is a ugly, nasty fight. Peter Cousins wrote a great book about Iuka and Corinth. If you've never been to Corinth, you should. They've done a remarkable job. There's a
great museum.
Off the topic, but there's an incredible contraband, escaped slave interpretation and exhibit, both in the visitor center and also on the east side of town where there was a contraband camp. But anyways, they were there, and then they end up at Vicksburg, and they're stuck in there with the rest of Pemberton's army. But of course they're mining. Everybody's probably heard of the Battle of the Crater. Well, this was an early effort by federal troops who, I don't know if these guys were from Pennsylvania or not, but they dug a mine underneath a Confederate redoubt, I believe. And when it blew up, Cockrell went 70 feet in the air, and he was all messed up, but survived it somehow.
Yeah, keeps on ticking. Ends up in Atlanta and finally here. And
yeah, right. So after Vicksburg, when everybody, when the Confederates are captured, and then they're eventually the exchange programs. They end up back in the Army.
And he gets a promotion while he's in prison, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's weird.
And those kinds of exchanges, and then, these guys taking an oath not to fight until they were properly exchanged. This is the stuff that drives Grant nuts, because many of the guys he later captured at Chattanooga were guys that he had captured at Vicksburg. And, then the whole POW situation deteriorates in 1864. But Cockrell's guys, so the brigade itself, these are all Missouri infantry regiments, 1st, 3rd, 4th. There's a whole slew of these guys, and they are, Missouri's an interesting place. You mentioned Warrensburg. Cockrell he grew up not far from, I don't know, 75 or 100 miles or whatever, from where Harry Truman was born. So this part of Missouri is interesting. There's a lot of, I think Missouri's the most divided state, I think, in the country. And ironically, most of the southern support was in the middle or northern part of the state. It wasn't in the southern part of the state because that was hill country. It tended to not have a lot of slave owners. But this area, especially around the central part of the state, kind of where the interstate runs from St. Louis to Kansas City today, and north of the Missouri River, which was called Little Dixie, was huge southern support, which is so strange because it's hot as blazes in the summertime, but it'll drop 10 inches of snow on you in the winter. That's
ferocious.
It's a little bit like parts of Virginia.
Yeah.
So he comes out of that environment. Great divisions, but if you were a Southern loyalist, you were a Southern loyalist, and if you were a Unionist, then you were a Unionist.
Which is what leads to all that guerrilla fighting there.
Right.
I mean, even exclusive of what's happening in honest-to-goodness battles, you got all those guerrillas out there doing horrible things to men, women, and children. I mean, nobody's spared.
So if you ever see photographs, and there aren't many of these guys, especially from the early stages of the war, some of these Missourians, I mean, Jesus, it looks like they just came off a movie set. Like they've got flannel, like raggedy flannel shirts and pants that aren't the right size, but they got this Bowie knife, which is like...
These are mountain men.
These are like,
for reals.
They're really... Yeah.
Ozarks.
There you go. They're mountain people, like not like the hills of East Tennessee. Like this is a whole different kind of situation that goes on out there. And they're unbelievably tenacious fighters. And Cockrell, there's a guy we haven't mentioned, John Bowen. And Cockrell only was elevated in command because of Bowen's death. Bowen... there was a book written about him years ago. I think Philip Tucker wrote it, called Forgotten Stonewall of the West, which is about John Bowen, and he was the commander of the brigade. And Bowen got dysentery when they were in Vicksburg. I mean, he was just god-awful sick. Well, when Grant is, he's just choking Pemberton, and Pemberton didn't want to surrender. I mean, who would, right? And so Pemberton's really kind of throwing a fit about he doesn't want to even go out and meet Grant. And it's Bowen who actually tells him, like, dude, you don't have a choice. Like, haul your tail out there and talk to him because we're all dying in here. So, Pemberton goes out, Grant gives him the terms and all that. Well, Bowen died like a week later. I mean, he never, I think he died between Vicksburg and Jackson. And so that's how Cockrell got elevated to command. And like Bowen, he was just incredibly well respected, but he was also a lot like them. They just probably worn a suit for a little longer and had gotten a bit more refined, but they came out of that general environment. They knew the men. And then, so they were connected to, they were in Leonidas Polk's army for early 64. Like they're down in, well, at one point they're in Demopolis, Alabama, and they're actually with Cockrell. That's where Cockrell and John Adams, who's killed at Franklin, probably first crossed paths. And then that army gets attached to Joe Johnston's army in early 64. And I'm thinking some of this goes back for me so long. Like I read Phil Gottschalk's book on the Missouri Brigade. The best. There's nothing else close to it. We've sold it. Gottschalk's been dead for years, but it's called In Deadly Earnest. It is a fabulous book, and it covers the Missouri Brigade from beginning until end. So then they're here. You know, so they fight all the Cockrell gets wounded during the Atlanta campaign, gets one of his hands all gnarled up, and he stays in, and then they end up here.
And at Franklin, they're in a reserve position, but because of that advanced line, Claiborne's men get all choked up there, and Cockrell's men end up taking the brunt of that hit as they hit the main line, and 60% casualties, more than any brigade.
I was thinking on the way in about how in the years that I've been here, someone said something to me yesterday about battlefield reclamation, about how I must be proud of it. And I said, I don't think in those terms. I guess I am, but I just don't think like that. But this morning I was thinking about the interpretive work that we've done, things that I've written about. And it struck me, I worked really hard to tell the story of the 44th Missouri and to put them in context, a U.S. unit that, you know, held back Brown's division, yada, yada. But I was thinking about Cockrell's guys when I wrote my first book. There was so much emphasis at the Carter House back in the old days about Pat Claiborne's division and John Brown's division, and rightfully so. But Cockrell's men, to your point, he goes in with 696 men, effectives. They took 60% casualties. It's the highest of any Confederate brigade. There's nobody even close to that. Lowry is you know, it's bad for Lowry, but it's not 60%. Cockrell's wounded 4 times.
Both legs, right?
Elijah Gates, who took over the unit when Cockrell got knocked out, got so badly wounded in both arms he couldn't even hold the stirrups on his horse, and I mean the whole unit's just eviscerated. And I was trying to figure out like what happened to them. Well, they were in reserve, right? So there's only two brigades in French's division, and so Claudius Sears's Mississippians were in front, but they run into the left flank of Conrad's brigade. So that's the advanced line. And so Cockrell is in this weird place. So he's in reserve. Claiborne is already all bogged up with Conrad's guys, and then Brown's bogged up with Lane's guys, and Stuart, further east, the rest of Stuart's corps, sweeping past Carnton, they don't run into anything except scathing Federal fire.
Right.
Cockrell moves around Sears. Like, he doesn't stop. He just goes, which is just battle instinct. And he moves the unit just to the right, and he hits this weird seam. And so when they're coming in toward the line, they're not coming at it straight. They're actually coming in at an angle, which opens them up to all this enfilade fire on their right flank. There was a guy in one of the companies who said the first volley from the Federals, there were like 27 of them, and he said it took like 25 of us out.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, they're just laying waste to the brigade. And I remember I had an idea, and then I wrote about it, then I pulled it out, then I went and talked to some of the people in the know, and I was pretty insistent that Cockrell's brigade was the first Confederate unit to hit the Federal line, which was heresy, because how dare I say it wasn't Claiborne's men or Brown's men, it was Cockrell. There's a reason why, and it's only probably a couple of minutes, maybe not even that, but they hit this weird seam. And I remember when I found the accounts of the guys like in the 104th Ohio who actually said they didn't fire at Claiborne's men initially. They were firing oblique volleys into some of Stuart's men first. Well, who's the only one of Stuart's men that those guys could have been firing into were Cockrell's men, because Walthall and Loring were further to the east. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is why they took 60.
Just chewed up,
They're chewed up, and then they start taking blasts from the 6th Ohio. I think Cockrell's brigade was effectively out of action within an hour. Those who got through that initial maelstrom put up some fight, but a lot of them just surrendered. And then post-Franklin, it's so bad for them that they didn't even get sent to Nashville. Right, they got shipped south to, I think they were doing bridge duty, actually. I think they got shipped down to the Duck River to help get the pontoon bridge ready in case, which turned out to be...
That they come back through there.
It turned out to be actually relatively helpful, since the Confederates needed that bridge. And then where do they end up at the end of the war?
Alabama, right? They're down in Mobile.
They're down in Mobile. Yep. Yeah. And Cockrell rejoined the unit. So Pat Landrum will love this because, what happens at Blakely. No, he's Mississippi boy.
Oh.
He just likes Fort Blakely and Spanish Fort because that's where they end up as the last Confederate port really gets sealed up. And Cockrell and what's left of the brigade, it was a couple of hundred guys at that stage. They actually were inside the fort when probably one of the largest artillery barrages of the American Civil War exploded in Mobile Bay. I mean, they just pummeled that fort, Spanish Fort and Fort Blakely, and then the war was over. So, what about his post-war career?
So he goes home and resumes his practice as an attorney, but pretty quickly he is elected a U.S. Senator from Missouri, and he serves for 30 years. He's reelected 4 times and serves a total of 30 years. And even when he's done, he's repeatedly appointed to committees. He's a big infrastructure man. He believes railroads. I don't know that he's working a whole lot for civil rights necessarily, but he is certainly helping build post-war America. And Truman puts him on a committee that has to do with infrastructure, I think.
Who did?
Not Truman, God. Roosevelt.
Roosevelt?
Yeah. No, Teddy Roosevelt.
I was going to say.
Appoints him to his first committee, I think, post-Senate.
Wow, I see. I didn't know that.
And he's serving on the war, has a position, ordnance or something with the War Department right up at the end. He lives to be 81 years old, and he's still on that committee when he dies in Washington.
He does not have, no one has ever written a biography.
Really?
All the Civil War literature. All of the biographies of Nathan Bedford Forrest and even Claiborne, and God knows there's been plenty on Lincoln and Grant and Jeff Davis and all these others, and even some of these lower ranking officers, nothing.
That's interesting.
Nothing on Cockrell. And I've kicked it around before. I've never pursued it far enough, but maybe someday.
For all of his accomplishments, though, my favorite thing about him, there's a photograph of him sitting with his grandkids, and that's the Cockrell I love. I mean, I appreciate all that he's done, but he looks just like a doting granddad.
That's a great photo, we got 10, 15 years ago, and it was part of a collection of stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, look at him, and I think that's probably maybe the late 1880s, 1890s. He was a senator at the time. I think it was probably taken in D.C. It's a great photo. He's a very interesting character.
Outlives 3 wives.
Right. Yeah, he's just like Moscow Carter. He couldn't keep a wife alive. One of the best memories I have of placing interpretive markers at Franklin was when we put up the marker to the Missouri Brigade, so that people can go down into that area, which is, essentially a couple of 100 feet south of where the Carter cotton gin was, and you can get a sense of topography, and that it's a hill, but you can also see where Cockrell's guys were. Really, their career ended. Their 3.5 years of war, for all intents and purposes, ended at Franklin. So, any last things about FM Cockrell?
He's an interesting guy.
All right, thanks everybody.